How's everybody doing? Awesome. So my name's Ryan. I'm building an RV10. Maybe while we get this set up here, I'll talk to you kind of about my origin story. I'm sure we all have one. But who here flew remote control airplanes? Like, I remember we were redoing our house as a kid, and we were staying in some other house, and it was a rainy day, and I opened up the closet looking for something to do, and there was like one of those old school, like really small balsa that you then eventually cover with tissue and dope. And I was doing a lot of like die-cast models, like plastic models at the time, and remote control cars. But I remember I started putting this airplane together, and then in the back of it, it's like you can cover it in tissue, and you can wrap it in dope and put a rubber band on it, and it'll fly. And so I did that, and it flew once, right? Everyone knows how that works. But that kind of got me interested in all of this, and I'll fast forward. I was competitively doing some IMAC, like miniature competition stuff with remote control, and a bunch of us went out to an abandoned airstrip one day, and we were doing some practice and flying out there, and a guy landed on the airstrip we were flying RC on, and it was this little small low wing bubble canopy thing, and I was like, what is that? Like, all I knew at that point was like Cessnas and all the big stuff, the popular stuff. And I was probably about 20 at the time, and he took me up for a ride, and of course everyone talks about the RV grin, right? Like, what airplane is this? Like, what's going on? Like, how do we do this? And he's like, it's an RV4. I built it myself. And I'm like, whoa. Hold on, back up. You can build an airplane, which I'm sure, where do we do the, oh, this is the HDMI. And so I really remember, it was probably about 2003 that happened, which is about the same time, because I go home that night, and I go to Van's website, and they were talking about the RV10, a four-seater. And I remember, I was like, I'm going to build an RV10 one day. I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when. And about 20 years later, well, about 18 years later, that opportunity came up. But it was one of those things, like I would visit Van's website like once a year while I was finishing college, while I was working, while I was doing everything. And when the opportunity came around, that's when I did it. So we're going to talk a little bit today about just kind of the build process, but you guys are mostly builders here. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I am going to talk about, like we said, like decision fatigue, just builder fatigue, like kind of, everyone's probably familiar with a lot of stuff that happened with vans maybe a year and a half ago, and how that slowed a lot of us down. But feel free, ask any questions if you want at any point. Just, we'll keep this casual and fun. So again, just a couple of quick pictures, just kind of how I got started. If anyone doesn't know, those are the EAA work tables. They're great. One suggestion I would make, the plans have you put the crossbars like 3 or 4 inches off the ground. Or I'm sorry, about 12 or 15 inches off the ground. Don't do that. Put them as low to the ground as you can, because nothing fits on the shelf. So I built the first one, and I sent it to a buddy, and he's like, do the next one like 2 inches off the ground. And that gave me like an extra 8 inches here, so then all my stuff fits on it, but my one table, literally nothing fits on the shelf. Of course, we all start with a toolkit that was $35 that I think is $3,000 now with inflation. Something like that. The light box, which again was like $100, which I've heard is like $400 now. I'm being serious. But I bought, I think he was a member here, Jared Wellman. I bought his RV10. He kind of got through tail cone, got through the empennage, and then got the wings started, and decided not to finish building. It's never happened. Yeah, about 3. Yeah. He moved up to Dallas. So when it was finally kind of like, this is all coming together, I own a house with a 3-car garage now. I don't have any time in my life, but I had a little bit of money because I'm actually like an adult and making a living, not when I was 20 years old. And so I was like, I think it's time to build an airplane. And so I went onto Facebook, and in like 3 minutes, he's like, I want to sell my RV10 if you're interested. I'm like, all right, let's talk. So I went over to, anyways, it got delivered, and like that was the first stage of overwhelm. Some of us get parts delivered, and it's like, okay, like it's a 4-foot by 8-foot box, and you kind of figure out where to put stuff, and that's a little overwhelming. When 2 wings, a tail kit, and everything, my wife like turned white as a ghost, was like, this is real, what are we doing? Because it happened really quickly, and I can tell you, I spent like a week of like, I really don't even know why I'm doing this or what I'm doing, of just literally completely freaking out. So that was kind of the first step. So maybe don't start with wings and a tail kit being delivered. Just my thought process. But, you know, we got to have a little fun. My kid got to sit in there, and you are going to need, everyone knows this, but you are going to need neighbors to help you a little bit. Not a ton, not as much as I thought, but when you need it, you need it. Everyone knows priming is like the big discussion, right? To prime or not to prime. So I built this little thing. I put Corrosion X on one side, I primed one part, and I didn't prime another part. This has been sitting outside of my house for 4 years now. I should have taken a picture to show you. There is not one lick of anything on even the unprimed parts. There's not even, a water spot, like a hard water spot, but no corrosion, no rust, no nothing. It's losing its shine, but I did this on purpose because, as you noticed, part of the airplane was not primed, the part that I bought from him. So I decided to prime going forward. I have no idea why. I think it's peer pressure. I should have brought it in. I'll bring it in next week. But it's been sitting outside in the Texas heat. The Texas, like literally once a year I look at it. It is fully exposed to sun. It is fully exposed to elements, and there is nothing happening on the untouched portion. The Corrosion X, at this point, 4 years later, I haven't reapplied, so that looks exactly the same. What's that? Oh yeah, no, it gets pretty good sun right there. I know what you're saying, but it gets pretty good. Oh, so the water sits on it? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that. Does anyone have any different experiences? Does anyone have good quality aluminum that is showing corrosion in that period of time? Just curious. Yeah. Interesting. Because the water's sitting. Interesting. I'll do that when I get home. I'll switch it around. If you have young kids, like my son's not super interested in it, so I do anything I can to keep him just involved in the process. You'll see a couple other pictures of him, but even when he was young, just watching cartoons while I was building, I know some of my handiness came from me just watching my dad fix stuff, like even if I wasn't involved in it. So the first kind of big step was, of course, because of the stage that I got the airplane in, like the first big thing I had to do was tanks. Everyone dreads the fuel tanks. They're not that bad. Watch a couple of videos, put on some clothes that you don't care about, mix up some Pro Seal, and like get to work on it. Like just honestly, I didn't find that bad. My tanks didn't leak. I had one little section that I was able to fix before I put the baffle, the back part on, but this just wasn't. I don't know. Everyone kind of freaked out about it. It wasn't that bad. I took a lot of time. Like you can see, like I masked off, right? So I could, because you're not supposed to scuff the nice shiny aluminum, but I scuffed where the Pro Seal was going to go. Some parts are better than the others. I just went with traditional fuel senders. I know some people are doing different ones, but what was interesting, I don't think I have a picture of it, but my first lesson, I'm not very good at electronic stuff. So I've had to learn how to use a multimeter, which shouldn't be that hard. But I remember that was the first time I bought a multimeter and kind of did some research to test them before I sealed them in. This was the stage where I put, because you can't pressurize the tank at this point because the baffle's not on, so I just put tissue paper along every rivet line and filled it with water and then let it sit for like a half hour. And that's where I found one tiny drop, went in, put some Pro Seal on it, we were good. So definitely if you're going to buy an airplane from someone, look at everything. I spent 3 weeks inspecting. You'll see in the next picture, if you look on this picture here, there's no, that piece right there is the aileron stop. And if you notice, the first picture of the aileron stop is not there. So just I had to redo that. That kind of sucked. But luckily, before I put the rear skins on or the bottom skins on, I was able to drill out these rivets. I had to order that part from Vans and replace that. But I literally called him. I'm like, "What? Why did you grind that off?" He's like, "I have absolutely no idea why I ground that off." So maybe he was doing a modification, didn't remember why I have no idea. But definitely go through everything, which I'm glad I did. And I got some help from great people like Mr. Dean over here and other people who helped me out. But that was after I put the new one on and repaired it. There was a lot of service bulletins I was behind on. So, or he was behind on, so obviously I was able to get to the service bulletins. This was an enhancement on the rudder stop, or the rudder stop. There's an elevator where in some extreme conditions, the elevator could get stuck. The control horn could travel too far because the original plans had this just being a straight angle. And so then the modification was to buy a thicker angle and then grind this piece out to prevent the elevator horn from traveling too far. Just little things, go through all that. This was the biggest upgrade I've done to my airplane, which is an air conditioner in my garage. I tried it one summer without. Don't do it. If you are budgeting to build an airplane in your garage in Texas, include an air conditioning unit in your garage in the budget. This one was very cheap on Amazon, and I installed it myself. It worked perfect. So again, I just kind of did a little video here. I do a YouTube channel of this. I don't do it to make money. I don't do it to get discounts on things. I do it because I have this dream that when I'm old and don't remember anything, and my son is flying this airplane, I'd like to think that he can sit around and watch videos of Dad. One, know what I did, but two, just like, I don't know, I just think it would be cool. I would love to have videos of my dad doing stuff like this with me. So really, it's public. I'm trying to pay it forward. I'm getting a ton of help from other builders. So if I can pay anything forward, I try to watch all their videos and I try to talk about things in my videos that maybe other builders haven't talked about. But I'm really doing it one section at a time. I'm not documenting every process. I'm doing like a 20-minute recap every time I finish a section of just kind of what I did. But I enjoyed this video because it's the first time anything moved on the airplane. I did run into a challenge. This whole pushrod assembly came out about a 1/4 inch short. Even though I remeasured and it came out as per plans, I wasn't comfortable when I extended out the rods on those eyeballs. They're not supposed to go more than 50%. And I was probably at about 70% on both ends. So I was able to call Vans and they make the exact same eyeball, whatever you want to call that, with a 1/2 inch longer threading portion. So I just did that. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here in the video. But yeah, you don't remember anything. For anyone who is building or hasn't built, things that you remember that you're like, I'm never going to forget this. I can tell you going back a year, I don't remember why I did things or what I did. So having the videos is awesome. Right before I sealed up the wings, right, just kind of have all my lines, everything run, everything wired up, and yeah, and then, during all that I got my instrument rating, which is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. No joke. If anyone here has done it recently or anything, it is the hardest thing. Like, nothing professionally is harder than getting that instrument rating. If you told me right now I had to sit down with someone tomorrow to raise $1 million for my company, I would be less nervous about that than going through getting my instrument rating. However, it's probably the coolest thing I've ever done because I have a picture coming up I'll show you in a second. But, you're going to make mistakes. The bucking bar, drilled that out and put a rivet in it. It's fine. I was able to do the swing skins myself, completely myself. I didn't think I could get my body into the positions I could get it in, but I was able to do it. The bottom skins. So here's where kind of this conversation about builder fatigue starts. Everyone familiar with the laser cut part kind of scandal, right? So basically, it was awesome to go to Oshkosh. Dean was there. We were sitting in the front row listening to Ryan do the presentation, Ryan Johnson, about kind of what happened. But ultimately, I'm only bringing this up because this kind of started this downward spiral for me in my building process. Ultimately, I don't have any fear or any concern about any of the laser cut parts I have. If I'm going to trust Vans to put my family in their airplane, that means inherently I trust their engineering. The same engineers put together all kinds of testing, and if I'm not going to trust their testing, why am I going to trust their engineering? So their testing concluded that it's really no factor, that the laser cut parts are failing at the exact same rate punch parts are failing, and they're not actually failing at the hole, they're failing at the perimeter of the dimple, the exterior, so a 1/16 to maybe 1/4 inch away from the hole, is eventually where these things fail. And if you're interested, watch their videos. They're phenomenal. But the point is, again, I'm taking pictures of every laser cut part I have. I'm doing visual inspections on them. And I'm noticing they use 3 different vendors, if anyone doesn't know what happened. But basically, when they designed the file to go to the laser cutters, it is supposed to start in the center of a hole and work its way out like that. So it starts here and then it works its way out like that. What ended up happening is one of their LCP vendors, I'm assuming to save money, decided that they could go faster by starting at 12 o'clock, burning a hole, and then coming back to 12 o'clock to finish. And what that did was heat treat this area to make it brittle. So 2 of their vendors didn't do this, one of them did. And so again, I trust Vans. This was a Vans process. They designed and tested a good process. One of their vendors failed them. But the point is, I have pictures of friends, but I have yet to come across any parts that have that brittle part. So again, I'm moving forward with all the LCP stuff. Again, just kind of pictures of my son. Oh, the instrument picture that I wanted to share with you. We'll get through all this. This was also where the builder fatigue starts. If you notice some mock-ups of avionics, and I'll talk about that. But it's getting big. The tail cone is connected. Another part that led to builder fatigue, that's a duplexing fuel valve, which for anyone who knows, that means that I'm running an electronic ignition system and an electronic injection system, contrary to Mr. Dean's beliefs over here. Which means my fuel system just got more complicated, my electrical system just got more complicated, because I have to return fuel to the same tank that I'm pulling it out of, which led to that. I'm just going to go through all these pictures here, finish up. My brake lines, I built all my own brake lines and fuel lines. I didn't like the plastic kind of weird cheap ones that Vans supplies, and then the kit from some guy was like $3,800 for them. And I talked to a couple people, and I bought everything I needed for $600 at Summit Racing, and I learned how to build them myself, and I pressure tested them, and now that's a skill I have. So I would highly suggest anyone here, I don't know, I mean, you guys know more about this than I do, but I'm super happy with how they came out. I did. They sell a little testing kit where you put a pressure valve on one side and you put like a bicycle pump. You pump them up to a certain amount of pressure, and then you just let them sit for a few minutes or dunk them in water. And so yeah, so I tested them, and they're all great. This was one service bulletin that Vans released. This is really an awkward place to get to, but this was the only part on my kit that Vans said was red and they suggested replacing. There is absolutely no way, you can't imagine this, but this is my my rear spar, I guess you would say. So my fuselage, right, let's call this the main spar. It's this rear spar right here that has like a belt. Like if you look at it like this, it has this belt across it with holes here for the wings and then tons of rivets. This thing is riveted in a million places into the center of my fuse. You cannot tell me that removing that and drilling out 200 rivets is not going to do more damage than just leaving it. So they do have, there's one rivet here that they suggested putting an AN4 bolt. So you basically just drill out that rivet and put an AN bolt through it. And that was the modification I made. Wing root filters, again, doing it all myself. So basically fuel will come from the tank in here, get filtered, feed through, go to the engine, and then come back to the tank through there. The first time I got to sit in my airplane, that was like a week ago. I'm starting to work on fiberglass. For anyone who's working on fiberglass. Oh, and then this is, I think I can turn up the volume. Oh, seriously? Forget it. I was going to do kind of I did an update video, but I don't want to start installing. I'm not connected. So basically, what happened to me was right about the time of the LCP, the laser cut parts issue, was also a point where my tail cone was not connected, and that's kind of a big deal. It was also a point where I needed to make some decisions on my engine because there's a 2-year lead time on engines right now, and it was also a point where I needed to make some decision on avionics because that all drives off of itself. So if I decide, and I needed to order a cowl because if I decided to do a modification to my engine, the stock Vans cowl wasn't going to fit. And so like I got hit with like the laser cut parts, and then like this decision tree that I couldn't even map out on a piece of paper of how every single decision affected another decision. And I just kind of stopped. Like I just kind of stopped building because I couldn't fathom, like, once I make that decision, that affects all these other things. And so I think kind of for me, the way I worked through that was a little bit of like just laying it all out and figuring out like what was that one decision that started painting me in corners, whether that's good or bad, but it did. It painted me in a corner of like, if I put the cold air induction on my engine, which again, some people have said it's a total waste of money, total waste of time, doesn't really add anything. To me, it just seems like a really logical thing. I don't like the fact that a standard Lycoming engine pumps air through the hot oil before it gets injected into the engine, especially in a hot summer situation. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So like once I made that decision, that means I can't use the Vans cowl. So then I was able to delete that from Vans, which allowed me to then order my finish kit because that was holding me up. And then again, when I had to go to my engine builder, then it was, what am I doing for ignition and injection, because I can't design my avionics without doing that. And so you can kind of see how all this came together. But basically I started with the engine. I made those decisions. And then once I made those decisions, everything else kind of freed itself up. But, you know, I can't imagine anyone who's building an airplane has ever been through either difficult decisions or realizing the cost of what you're about to do. When I started building this airplane, the engine was about $50,000. The engine's close to $90,000 now. When I started building the airplane, the avionics was about $35,000. The avionics are close to $60,000 now. Because of Vans bankruptcy, even though I had deposits on my last two kits, and even though they offered them to me earlier than I needed them, but called and said, hey, I know you don't need these yet. We can ship them to you because your number's up and you put a deposit down, but we've got other builders who need them. Could we send it to them? I was like, absolutely. Last thing I want to do is store them. Well, that decision cost me about $20,000, about $8,000 on one kit and $12,000 on another kit. So again, I mean, all in all, this project's probably going to be about $80,000 more than what I had intended when I started it. So I think just kind of in combination of that and everything else. But what I did was I asked myself, this is not an airplane I'm building. This is not an airplane I'm building with the intention of ever selling it. This is not an airplane I'm building with the intention of like, I'll upgrade it again soon. When I look at the Cessna I fly now from 1977, that thing is just a beast. Like there's nothing, we just upgraded the avionics. We went to a full dyno panel in it. Like other than some interior and exterior paint, like that airplane is absolutely flawless at this point and still flying. So I'm trying to approach this from a standpoint of this airplane should last my family and myself the rest of our life. It's not, experimental aviation is not what it maybe was when you told me some of your stories of like, Dean told me about like pulling AN fittings and AN parts out of scrapped airplanes, grabbing avionics that were secondhand and mix matching everything together. That's probably where experimental aviation started. If you've looked at an RV-10 today, that is not what people are building in RV-10s, but they hold their value. I mean, an RV-10 right now, a brand new build on an RV-10 that's gone through flight testing will sell for $400 to $500, and it will not cost that much to build it. So what I started with for me was the decision of, you know, again, what's my mission? My mission is my family. My mission is my family's comfort. My mission is my family's safety. That's period, end of story. That's the mission. And so that means I can't get skimpy on not building the best airplane I can possibly build. And so once I kind of made that decision, that led down the road to everything else. But I still find myself like getting stuck in moments. Just build on. Like that's all I would say. Just build on. Just find something to build. Because when I kind of got stuck there, it was really this joining of the tail cone. Once you join the tail cone, you kind of pigeonhole yourself into making everything going forward more difficult. A lot of people said, don't join the tail cone. Do your avionics. Do all that first. But I was like, man, that's a year from now. My avionics aren't going to show up for a year from now. So it was like, I got to put the tail cone on, because if I don't put the tail cone on, I can't do the floors. And if I don't do the floors, I can't do the door. And if I don't do the doors, I can't do this. If I don't do that, I can't do that. And so I remember I was telling someone the story on the way here. I literally one night, I spent like 3 hours getting the tail cone attached because it was late at night. I didn't have anyone to help me, and I drove one rivet through it. So that way, in the morning when I woke up, I couldn't. I mean, obviously, I could drill that rivet out, but I put one rivet in. So in the morning when I woke up the next day to go in the garage, I was pot committed. The tail cone's connected, and honestly, like that moment there drove everything else because I finished up the tail cone, and then I could start working back in order of the plans. And so again, I guess I would say like I'm on the fiberglass now, and a lot of people are telling me, don't put the cabin top on, wait for the avionics. The avionics are going to be so much easier to install without the cabin top on. But then I start looking at the instructions, and it's this whole process of if I don't put the cabin top on, then I can't do this, and if I can't do that, I can't do this, and if I can't do that, I can't do that. So I'm just going to put the cabin top on, and I'll just solve the next problem. So does anyone remember the movie The Martian with it was with what can I think of his name? Matt Damon, right? That last scene when he's talking to MIT or JPL or wherever as an engineer, and they asked him the question of like, how did you survive? If you remember throughout the movie, it was like he figured out how to plant food, and then there was a problem. Then he figured out how to do this, and then there was a problem. Then he figured out how to do that, and there was a problem. And I love the line. I don't get it exactly right, but it's like we're engineers, we're scientists. We just wake up every morning and solve the next problem. So for me, I'm really trying not to think 2-3 years ahead unless I absolutely have to. I'm trying to just solve today's problem. And there are so many problems that I'm trying to solve, but I'm trying to just go in the garage today and solve today's problem. I don't know where certain things for the engine are going to go. I don't know where that's going to go, but that's a problem I'll solve when the engine shows up. I don't know where certain avionics are going to go. Like on the panel I do, but I mean in the substructure behind it. And it's like all these people are putting together these 3D models, and they're rendering everything out, and they're looking at it in all these different dimensions of making sure that their panel builder puts the exact right size wiring to make sure that everything fits exactly where it's supposed to go. And I'm just sort of taking this philosophy of just send me it, and if it's wrong, I'll cut the wire and I'll add a longer wire. But I just can't solve that problem right now. So anyways, that's kind of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has. Or I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on, I saw that tap. I'm assuming people were joking about how long it's taking you to build. So any questions? Anyone want to know anything more about the RV10 or why I made some of the decisions I made? Again, I'll just tell you what I'm doing. The engine, I did cold air induction. I did 9.5 to 1 compression instead of 8.5. I did not want to go higher than that for overhaul reasons, for everything else. I don't need more power. Plus, the reason I did 9 to 1 was that it still allows me to burn low gas if I want to in the future. Because I'm doing electronic injection and electronic ignition, which again, I know people are going to have mixed feelings about, but that's the decision I made. I'm happy to talk about why I did that or kind of the electrical system I'm putting together to support that. Those of you who don't know, that is a fully dependent electrical airplane now. If I lose electrical power, I lose my engine. Just period, end of story. There is no backup. I mean, there's electrical backups, but that's it. It is an electrical dependent engine. There is not a magneto on it. But again, the advantages that gives me is I'm trying to future-proof this. Whatever fuel, whatever ends up in that pump 10 years from now, all I got to do is pull the nozzle, fill up the tanks, hit the start button, and the computer figures out the rest. Lean of peak operations, whether you believe in it or don't believe in it, all I have to do is flip one switch and the engine instantly goes to lean of peak and it figures out the rest. That's all that other stuff. So there's no mixture knob. I've chosen to go, again, Dean, cover your ears for a second. I've chosen to go with Dynon and Advanced Flight Systems, not Garmin. I peer pressured into priming my airplane. I'm not peer pressuring into my avionics. Spent a lot of time at Oshkosh talking to these guys. I spent a lot of time on the phone with Rob Hickman at Advanced. And the decision for me was, if I can call up the guy who built the system and literally talk to him on a Saturday morning on his cell phone, that's what experimental aviation is all about. That's the guy I want to be working with. That you can't do that with Garmin. Now, you can get through to their support, but I have friends who literally, they're like, I went on a trip to Alaska, my screen failed, I called up Rob on a Saturday, and he overnighted me a screen. And then when I got back in town, I sent him my old screen back, and he sent it back to me and said he fixed it and sent me back, and he said, now you have an extra. Like that to me is why I made that decision. So based on that, again, if anyone has any questions, if anyone's struggling with a decision of their own or anything about, I do not have my engine. It is a 24-month build time. I put down my deposit, and then 2 months later, Barrett Performance Engines in Tulsa, Oklahoma is building it. I've been on the phone with Rhonda a lot, and again, that's what I love about it is I've been to her shop. I flew my Cessna up there I had a work trip up there, so I went to visit her. I'm going to go up there and build my engine with her. But like the fact that I can talk to her and we can work things out and build exactly the engine I want for my exact use case, because I'm going to do a dual alternator, single battery setup. So we're working all that out. But about 2 months after I put the deposit in, she called me and said, Lycoming raised prices $10,000 again. She's like, I think I'm going to have to pass that on to you. And I'm like, no, I think you're going to have to figure this out. Like, this engine's expensive enough. Like, so she was able to get an exception from Lycoming for that. But yeah, engine. It's a 540. Lycoming 540. So I did, Barrett designed a cold air induction system, which I didn't know what this was, but if anyone knows, basically the oil sump on a Lycoming, someone tell me if I'm wrong, but the oil sump on a Lycoming underneath the airplane where the oil sits, the air intake flows through Lycoming standard sump, which is why Lycomings don't really get a lot of carb icing. Continentals have a little more. For those of you who flew Pipers, there's a carb ice knob that you never touch. Flying a Cessna, we use the carb heat all the time. That's why Lycomings don't get carb heat, because they heat up the air. Well, we should know that hot air produces less manifold pressure, produces all the other lower power situations. So what Barrett did is they designed a sump system that separates the air from the sump. They claim you get more manifold pressure. They claim all this other stuff. I don't really care about more manifold pressure. I just didn't want hot air blowing into my engine. But again, by going with a builder like Barrett, when she orders the engine, she's going to find a core, remanufacture the core. She doesn't have to order their sump. And so I was able to save a little bit of money by getting exactly the engine I want without having to take apart a brand new Lycoming. And then, of course, the injection and ignition system through SDS. I did a lot of research on that. There's two companies, and one has really good support and one didn't. So, any other questions? Somebody asked. Yes, sir. She has secured a core, which will be a remanufactured core. She'll do all of the remilling and everything on the core, and then she's buying a build kit from Lycoming. So we haven't figured out certain things yet, like cylinders. Like, I don't know what cylinders she likes to use. I don't know what pistons she likes to use. We can figure that out when we get closer. Some people like Continental cylinders. Some people like Millennium cylinders. Some people like Superior cylinders. Yes. That's my understanding. Yes. I could be wrong in some of that, but that's my understanding, is that yes, she will go out and source all of the parts based on the specs that we've talked about, and then I will go up there and we will assemble an engine. So yeah, she's basically an engine assembler. So I'll respond to you. Do you see challenges, or are you asking that because you're curious about? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, all I know, she keeps referring it to me as like a Lycoming build kit, which I don't know. I'm assuming that includes things like valves and cam and kind of the more complicated stuff, and then things like cylinders and pistons. One would think, because it is now very much an experimental engine. Like in the Cessna right now, we're sourcing a new engine. We need a new 0470U, and we were thinking about going to one Surefly mag. We don't need a vacuum pump anymore. And when I spoke to the guy who's going to order the engine for us, I'm like, can we get it with only one mag and with no vacuum, like with the whatever? He's like, maybe you misunderstood when I told you. You told me you wanted a 470U. I don't have any other questions for you. You're getting a 470U certified from the factory, and this is how it comes. And I'm like, okay, I'm just used to the experimental world. Things are a little different. He's like, you don't get to choose anything. I was like, all right, cool, great. Please. Thank you, sir. You've instilled confidence in some of the things that I'm doing, so that's very much appreciated. Rhonda's been fantastic. There's another guy, Aero Sport Power, up in Canada, who also, these are pretty much the two that do the engine specs that I'm looking for at a volume level that I'm comfortable, where they've done it. People are flying them, they know what they're doing. I just like the idea of Tulsa, which is a 2.5-hour flight in my Cessna, versus the west coast of Canada. So that's why I made that decision. But Rhonda's been fantastic, unbelievable to work with. Her shop is busy right now, which is good. But yeah, it's been really an enjoyable project. I'm loving learning. 3 years ago, I couldn't have said anything I just said about any of this stuff. I didn't know what an oil sump is. I didn't know what any of this is. So this is a fun journey. I'm really looking forward to putting the engine together. Yeah. No. It's going to come with an EXP. It'll be an IO 540 D4A5 EXP. Oh, I'm assuming, yeah. Yeah, it would anyway. Well, I have to do 50 hours of... Oh, one other decision that I've already made, and no one in here can convince me differently, even though it's going to be slower and it's going to be more expensive. I'm doing a 3-blade prop for one reason, they look awesome. So again, everyone's going to tell me I could save $5 or $6 grand and I'll pick up 2 or 3 knots with a 2-blade. I don't care. When that airplane's sitting out there with a 3-blade, it is just dead sexy. And that's what I'm doing. So deal with it. I am not even thinking about painting right now. I'm going to build it. It's probably going to be aluminum for 4 or 5 years, because I don't even know, because a good quality paint job right now is $35,000 on an RV. And here's the crazy part. $15,000 of that is paint. So even if I were to paint it myself, I'm going to spend 15 grand on paint. So I was thinking, and part of me was like, just paint the thing like, I want to do a flat paint, a matte. Part of me is like, paint it like a off-white cream, and then I can do vinyl wraps and things on it, but it's just going to be aluminum with a sticker on the back of the tail number. Deal with it. Yeah.
How long have you been working on it?
3.5 years. And he had about a year into it, so let's call it 4.5 years.
But for you,
3.5.
Yeah. And so, just tell us what has happened to you, good or bad, right or not, since you started life.
So I've been through three divorces, 2 bankruptcies. And then, no, I did not factor in divorce. It was very expensive. Sorry. I took a 16-year break between flying, and I restarted about the time I rebuilt.
Yeah.
But yes, yep.
So since starting this, what has changed? Do you feel like, I mean, do you have more motivation in life, or is this been a burden?
So I'm very fortunate that I own two little businesses myself. I don't think that they're anything wildly successful, but I do. One is a coaching and consulting business. One is a small software business. But the point is, I own them. And what this has done is this has continually motivated me because I have big checks to write on a very regular basis. And I believe there's a theory in real estate. Is anyone here in real estate agent? There's a theory in real estate that the best way to get an underperformer on your team to perform is get their wife pregnant. Now, not necessarily you doing that, let them do that, but the theory is when a child is coming, you will get off your butt and go to work. And I believe in that theory. I constantly make very responsible financial decisions, but I constantly push myself financially so I don't ever get lazy with my work. And I will tell you, I'm working more hours at my job now than I've ever worked. I'm working harder than I've ever worked, but my business is growing in a way that it's outpacing my airplane bill. So I'd say probably the biggest thing for me was it keeps me on my toes. You know, when I've got to write a $30,000 check twice a year for different deposits and different things, it's like you gotta, all right, I got 3 months until that check's coming. What are we doing today, this week, tomorrow to keep the business moving? So that's just how I get motivated. Other people that might shut you down, that sort of stress and pressure. But I actually made the decision to build the airplane because I knew I could figure out a way to make the money. I don't have the money. It's not like I had a couple $100,000 sitting around with nothing to do. I just keep figuring out ways to write checks for $30,000. So again, not everyone's going to be in a situation like that. Some people have jobs and they have budgets and things have to be a little different. But my wife, yep. I have one kid, and that's all I'm planning on having. Surgically, it would be very difficult to have another. But that kid takes an enormous amount of time in my life. I was talking about baseball earlier. He's a very competitive young baseball player, and he has multiple lessons a week, and he plays on a select travel team. So 3 Saturdays and Sundays a month are all day Saturday. Does anyone here have kids that did competitive baseball? So these are round robin style tournaments. So you play until you lose, and unfortunately my son's team doesn't lose that much. So we get to tournaments at 8 or 9 in the morning, and we leave at 8 or 9 at night, Saturday and Sunday. So weekend builds are almost out. But I try to touch the airplane every day. Dean gave me this advice, and a lot of other people did. Even if I just go in the garage, read a set of plans, and pull out the screws, I do that every day. I touch my airplane every day. Thank you. And it was great advice that was given to me. Because originally when I started this, it was going to be like, set aside 8 hours on a Saturday, and that's what I was going to do. And everyone was like, that doesn't work. That's not how you do it. And so I've really adopted this model of just, even if all I do, sometimes I'm on a work call and I have my electric drill with a deburring bit, but I also have my manual one. Sometimes I'll just deburr 100 holes while I'm on a phone call. But if that's what I did today, that's something.
Well, it's all part of the how do you know?
Yep.
Figure out.
Thank you for the help.
That's another aspect.
Family. Thank you. It's
So they, you're going to do that.
And deeper holes on calls like I can. Yep. Because it won't be ready by the time she graduates college. Yeah, and thank you. I do feel like I'm making pretty good progress on it. I feel like I'm moving at a pretty good pace. More than anything, I'm just proud of the knowledge I've acquired. Like I'm not like learning electrical is scary now. I'm going to lean on Dean a lot for this. You're going to have to like my electrical system, or you're going to have to like my decision now because we're going forward. But no, but thank you. I'm just kind of a dork when it comes to like learning stuff and going deep and down rabbit holes, and that's the 10 is also a rabbit hole. So one of the biggest challenges I think I had with the 10 was you get to this place where there's literally one line in the instruction that says now would be a great time to start thinking about your avionics, and then the next page is a whole nother section, and that's all it does. Like that's literally it. Now would be a great time to start thinking about your avionics, and then now let's go work on something else. And so the idea is, while the 10 is great because it has pre-punched holes and it has matched holes and all that amazing stuff, they learned a lot of problems that builders have from the 10 to the 14. Because like when I look at Tyson's and Bo's 14s and Jeff's, like there are conduit runs, there are places to mount wires, and there are clips and what's the word I'm looking for? Harnesses that come with it. This is where this antenna goes. This is where this wire goes. This is the harness you use. With the 10, it's literally, now's a great time to start thinking about your avionics. So just, yeah, I think, yeah. Anyways, thank you. Any, I know it's been a while, so yeah. No. Garmin is about equivalent. And actually, it's arguable that if I went with Dynon screens, I probably could have saved a couple dollars over Garmin. The advanced flight screens are actually more expensive than a G3X Touch. It was the support. It was that when I'm building this thing and I can't get this one thing to work, I can literally call up Rob Hickman, who designed it, and he'll be able to walk me through, oh, you just have this one pin swapped or whatever it is. But it was support. That was my decision. By the way, Brian is incredibly smart. And honestly, that when we sat through the laser cut part presentation that Brian ran, that was one of the decisions for me. I'm like, if that kid is that smart, I'm like, his dad must be a pretty good dad. So I'm going to go with his dad, to be honest, because that kid is smart. Honestly, I want to thank everyone in this room. I want to thank the people who've helped. I know I haven't been able to show up at a lot of meetings, but you cannot do this alone. Now, maybe you can rivet alone, but the support that, again, Dean from the day I bought the airplane, kind of coming over the house and just making sure that the guy who built before me, and then having someone to just bounce ideas off of. Again, I don't think I've gone forward with one of Dean's suggestions for anything, but having him available to talk about, we went to Oshkosh together and we spent hours talking about Garmin versus Advanced, and just having his brain that's operating at a level that I'm not at, having him analyze and just make sure that I'm thinking about the right things as I make those decisions, that's been hugely valuable. And again, just having everyone, Tyson, Bo, have become really good friends. We've done the EAA build shops together. Jeff, I'm renting space from Jeff now. He's become a friend. So like this room becomes a very valuable. Is that your long?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, this room becomes a very important room to you. I borrow tools from people in here, so I want to thank everyone here because this is absolutely a dream of mine. I hope a lot of you are there when this thing flies. I am gonna be bawling like a baby. So someone's gonna have to be in the cockpit with me to wipe tears off my eyes because this is gonna be getting my instrument rating is the hardest thing I've ever done. Watching my wife give birth to my son was a pretty proud moment. I didn't really do much, and what I did was pretty fun. This is going to be the absolute proudest moment I've ever had in my life, and I just can't wait for that to happen. So get your airplane done. Thank you, guys. Thank you.